Alright everyone, gather round tight, pull up a chair, it's a cold winter's night. The fire is warm and the snow's piled high, and I've got a deck that I'd like you to try. No, this isn't a story of elves or sleighs, or reindeer with very contractual pay. No, this is a story of fire and snow, of mountains that walk and a world all aglow. Her name is Rionya, dancer of flame, who loved winter holidays more than the same. She loved the cold air, the frost, and the cheer, and she loved it when the whole world froze once a year. But Rionya thought, why stop at a day? Why not cover the whole world in snow and flame, I say? So she danced and she twirled, and she cast spell on spell, till the mountains themselves rang the jingle bell knell. And that's why today, on this festive occasion, I'll be showing you a deck that defies explanation. This is mono red Landfall, yes really, I swear, with snow-covered mountains that shouldn't be there. So stoke up the fire, let's mess with some rules. This is Rionya Fire Dancer, but let's make it Yule. That's right everyone, today I'm building a deck around Rionya Fire Dancer. She's one of the most popular mono-red commanders, and typically you build her by copying creatures with great ETB abilities. But instead of doing that, we're going to be turning mountains into creatures, copying those, and winning with landfall triggers. Let's have a look. Alright, let's talk about the woman responsible for all this nonsense. Rionya Fire Dancer, a 3/4 human wizard for 2 red and 3 generic that reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Normally, Rionya decks do one thing. They take creatures with great ETBs and they copy them to get even more of those effects. But we're not doing that. Instead, we're turning mountains into creatures and copying those for landfall triggers. So the first step of this is how do we even turn those mountains, or any of our lands, into creatures? Let's have a look. Cards like Genju of the Spires are the gold standard here. It enchants a mountain, turns it into a creature, and crucially, it comes back to your hand if the land dies. Crusher Zendikon does something similar. Crackling Emergence and Awaken the Ancient are your one big threat versions, turning a single mountain into a massive attacker that Rionya can then copy multiple times. And then there's my favorite card, Siege of Towers. This turns every mountain you control into a creature until end of turn if you pay its replicate cost. Plus, that artwork is phenomenal, so it's a must-have include. On top of all that, we're also running a whole suite of creature lands. Gitu Encampment, Faceless Haven, Mutavault, Mishra's Factory, Blink Moth Nexus, and Ink Moth Nexus. These don't require spells to animate, which is crucial, because sometimes you just need a land to already be alive before you start casting spells. Now, in order to get Rionya to trigger as many times as possible, we need as many cheap instants and sorceries as we can find. Now, luckily, we've crammed the deck full of them, and Rionya doesn't actually care what they do, just as long as we cast them. But if they can trip, that's even better. Cards like Expedite, Crimson Wisps, Crash Through, Renegade Tactics, and Warlord's Fury. These replace themselves and cost almost nothing. And then we've got some utility pieces. Faithless Looting and Gamble for digging for the right pieces, Strike It Rich and Rite of Flame for small mana bursts, and Spark of Creativity as card advantage. Every one of these spells cast increases the amount of copies that Rionya will make. Cast 3 spells and then target a mountain that's now a creature, well, you just make 3 token mountains. And when they enter, you'll trigger Landfall. They're also mountains, which is relevant for later on, and you can even tap them for mana should you need it. And speaking of the fact that these are all mountains and we're making loads of them, why don't we look at some of our win conditions? If mountains are entering the battlefield repeatedly, we need to be rewarded for it, and that's where the Landfall package comes in. Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, is our headline act. Every mountain entering turns into direct damage. With Rionya, a single combat step can represent 6, 9, 12 damage without ever attacking. Backing that up are cards like Akum Hellkite, Spitfire Lagak, Reckless Pyro Surfer, Kozi's Ravager, Retreat to Valakut, and Valakut Exploration. These cards turn every land into pressure for your opponents, but Rionya does have one downside, and that's that the tokens that she makes are exiled at the end of turn. Enter Sundial of the Infinite. Now this is a classic card in these decks, but here it's even better. You see, in your end step, when the exile trigger goes on the stack, you can activate the sundial to just end the turn, effectively removing it from the stack and keeping those token mountains sticking around. That's right, you just ramped in mono red landfall. And what's more, you did it with token lands that are just sticking around. Once you're making land tokens, you'll want to keep the landfall going, and that's where cards like these come in. Walking Atlas, Explorer's Scope, Scare Tiller, Navigation Orb, Girapa Orrery, Nahiri's Lithoforming, and Tiller Engine. These let you replay lands, sacrifice lands, or convert excess mana into even more triggers. Nahiri's Lithoforming in particular ends games out of nowhere when Valakut is online. On top of all this, you may find that one Rionya trigger just isn't enough, so we've got a few cards that let us double up on her ability. Harmonic Prodigy doubles her triggers, Shrionic Resonator can copy them, Delina Wild Mage can actually copy Rionya herself, and Reverberate lets us double up at instant speed. And with these, our mono-red landfall deck goes from a joke to a serious threat. And what's more, if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that all the mountains that I've been showing are actually snow-covered. And no, that's not just for vibes, there's a real reason we've done this. Scrying Sheets gives us card advantage, and Sunstone lets us repeatedly fog by sacrificing excess snowlands. But honestly, if you're telling this story at Christmas, they should be snow-covered. And with that, we've wrapped up Mono Red Landfall with Rionya, Fire Dancer. If you like this deck, hit like. If you got any comments on it or anything else, do leave one down below. And if you really liked it, hit subscribe because there's loads more decks coming. Now, this is my last video for this year, but it's been a really exciting one. So thank you to all of you for all of your support. I can't believe how well we've done in just a few months, and that's thanks to all of you. I hope you all have a lovely time with your families, friends, or whatever else you're doing, and I will see you in the new year. Bye.